Drivers Mate Podcast. Please like and subscribe, it helps a lot. Check me out on Instagram and TikTok, Drivers Mate and Drivers Mate Podcast. Alright, I was inspired by listening to something to talk about some of my childhood stories, right? And it was interesting when I reflect on them, of how I am still kind of that kid today, right? You drop me some comments, let me know any of your childhood stories, entertaining stories, or any kind of weird idiosyncrasies you did that you still kind of carry on today, right? So the first story, ironically both of them are regarding carrying, right? Carrying stuff. So the first story, right, well we could just go off into a tangent, right? So as a kid, I grew up, I had an older brother, older cousins, and a dad, of course, and they liked kung fu films, right? Because they're the older generation. They had lots of kung fu films, so we'd always watch their VHS recorded from the 80s, whatever, right? Yeah. So I would always go through their kung fu films and just watch them, right? And I fell in love with kung fu films as a kid, right? Imagine this little black boy with dreadlocks doing all the Shaolin monk moves, right? Every style you can imagine, I was practicing and imitating, right? In my spare time, I would do things like I would get garden poles and sticks and stuff like that and fashion them into weapons and just imitate the kung fu movie stuff, right? In the garden, wherever I was, right? But one thing that always stuck with me from the kung fu films was the training montages, right? You know, like the good old 80s training montage. But the way they used to do it in kung fu films, they would take like everyday stuff and practice them to build focus and build strength and stuff like that. So I would do that too, but one thing that I carried on doing for a while when I think I was in junior school, remember those bags you used to get with the like string bags? It's just a bag with two strings you put over your shoulders, right? Now, I wanted to get tough, right? Because I had a hard childhood and I didn't want to go through hardship. I wanted to get strong, right? I wanted to be hench if I could as a kid. And it's crazy, right? I wanted to be able to physically protect myself and mentally protect myself, right? For reasons unexplained, right? But I thought it would be a good idea, right? And partially some of this idea comes from Dragon Ball Z as well, right? With Piccolo and how Goku and that trained, right? I thought it would be a good idea, yeah, to take some of my older brother's plate weights, right? You know, like you used to get those Argos type weights, you get a small one, a big one, like that, right? I thought it'd be a good idea to carry some of those weights in my bag every day, right? I had a little string bag, right? And I would have heavy fucking barbell plates in my bag, right? Crazy, right? I know, but these are the things that young boys do, innit? Like we're just trying to get along in the world, trying to figure shit out, right? How do I get strong, right? And the mindset was this: how do I get faster and stronger, right? So if Piccolo trains with such heavy armor, when he takes it off he gets lighter and faster, then the logic obviously would translate. So I thought, right, it kind of did, right? Because it helped me in sports, like, so when I would play football I would play a defender's position, right? So you know how man say weights, right? A weight's a man off, or weight's a man down, right? It did kind of help, right? I was kind of sturdy, I was a stocky little kid, right? But that's one of the mad things that I used to do, right? And it's interesting, that kind of idea of wanting to be strong and wanting to be like not like a tough guy, but just someone that can defend themselves. As an adult, it carried on, right? So during high school I started to go to the gym a little bit, then I fell off for a couple of years. But as an adult, I trained still with weights, right? So that kind of way of thinking has translated up through time, right? Through my growth pattern, right? Another interesting thing I did as a kid in concern with carrying stuff, right, is when well, you know, like CD players, like, so some of you might not even know what a CD player is, like a portable CD player, like a Walkman CD player, right? Those were a thing for us as kids, right? And I'd even own one. I used to use my sister's, right, to borrow hers. But my dad used to have these like old spare like little connector parts, so mono phono connector parts for his rigs and stuff, his music stuff, his stereos and stuff, right? So I used to borrow those little things, right, and plug them in, like transform, see what I can do with them, right? So one time I took two old phono type speakers that are for surround sound, right? Back in the day, surround sounds had phono plugs, right? And there was loads of them that connected to one. So you have like a center speaker that no one ever used, and a top left corner, you know what I mean? Stuff like that, right? So I took two of those little speakers, I took the phono wires and I took the converter jacks, right? And I took them and I put them together, fashioned them in a way so it was a phono to jack, then a jack to a jack splitter, right? So a headphone splitter, you get two sides. So I got my left speaker and my right speaker by doing phono to jack twice, right? And then to a jack splitter, a headphone splitter into my CD player, right? But of course, because I'm a kid, I didn't realise when using a phono stereo, you need an amplifier, right? Something to amplify the signal to the phono speakers, right? Because they don't have their own power, like desktop monitors, right? Like monitor speakers for a computer, they don't have their own power. I didn't know that yet, but I managed to make it work anyway, right? So think about it like this: before we had phones, right? Because we didn't have phones. There was Nokias, like brick Nokias, but there weren't MP3 players, right? There weren't any device you could come outside with, outside of a boombox or a radio, that would play music loud from your device, right? So as a little inventive kid, like imagination, I wanted to be able to share my music with my friends through my speakers, right? So I hooked that little rig up, right, connected to my CD player, and it was quiet as shit, but it was loud enough that I could take it to school in my backpack and share music with my friends, right? And look at me now, right? I'm someone that got interested in music and carried on all the way up to adulthood, where I'm a good engineer, right? I understand how to work a studio, how to record, how to be a technician, how to be an assistant, how to mix. So I'm a techie guy with audio, right? But that example as a kid is like, wow, like you were thinking like that as a kid, like. So I'm proud of myself, but I also think you are mad little shit, right? Because I just thought to try things, right? I didn't care what was gonna happen. I would take things apart, I would examine things, I would do things, I would fuck up, yeah, and just be like, oh well, like I learned something, right? I tried and I learned something, right? Another example of that, of me trying to fix stuff, like, or trying to figure things out, right? My let's just say my brother-in-law, right? I would have been a little kid, he'd been an adult, right? So he was a man that had like one of the first people I knew that had like PlayStation 1s, right? The original big block ones, right? And he had bare of them, right? Because whatever he was into, yeah? None of my business. But he had like 3 broken ones, right? And 1 good one. So them, man, they don't care. They just dash down anything that's not working, right? I'm poor, I don't have anything, right? But you gotta remember, around the time where I got my hands on these broken PlayStation 1s, people already had Xboxes and PlayStation 2s and everything. And we're moving on in technology. I still didn't have anything, right? I had a square box TV with the wooden paneling at the back and 3 knobs on it, right? Luckily, I got given that, right? So just think about my circumstances from that point of view, right? So I desperately wanted to be able to play PlayStation, right? I wanted one for myself, right? And I couldn't buy one, no one was gonna buy me one. So I asked him if I could have the broken ones, the 3 broken ones, right? So he said, right, I ain't doing nothing with them, let me have them, right? So I took them home, and then I tested each one out with the TV to see what was wrong with them, right? I can't remember what was wrong with all 3, but I knew one worked enough, right? But it didn't read the CDs, right? So me being like an inquisitive little shit, I thought, all right, they're broken anyway, let me take it apart. Went and got screwdrivers, pulled it apart, right? Looked at the CD drive, the CD laser, right? And I replaced it. I took the one from one of the other ones, took out this one and put it in that one. Like, it sounds complicated, but it was not. Technology was not that hard to get your head around, right? Once you'd looked inside of circuit boards and stuff like that, it was nothing, right? It's just like a ribbon and a couple screws. You unplug one, you plug in the other, right? Because I'd seen my dad and my brother build PCs up in from the 90s to early 2000s, right? So I was about that. I was taken with them when they went to computer fairs, right? Things that don't exist anymore. But all of that to say this, I took the parts I needed from all these 3 PlayStation 1s, right, and built one PlayStation 1 that worked, right, and there I had my first console, right, because I was a kid, I just tried, right. This is what I'm saying. This is something that the kids of today are missing. They don't have the goal, like everything is done for them so much, they won't even have the wherewithal to think, I'm going to try and fix something, right. And this pattern of taking things apart and fixing things went on to phones, computers, PCs, TVs, whatever I needed, whatever I didn't have and I needed, I would figure out a way to make it work, right? That is what we came from. Ingenuity, imagination, inventive thinking children, right? Black kids were just, well, I can't even say black kids, right? The kids that I was, that is just what we had, right? My dad used to tell me boredom is a sin, like you got imagination, so think about something. Think about how to do something, right? Reverse engineer it. Look at it and say, how does this work, right? I didn't have access to books and that yet at this time. I didn't even have a library card yet at this time, right? So I didn't have the internet to search things up. None of that, right? I just had to figure it out. Look at it and think, this looks like this, so this might work here, right? Transferable knowledge and skills. And that idiosyncrasy of me, I don't know if idiosyncrasy is the right word, right? Anyway, right? But that wherewithal to try shit and fix shit as a kid transfers all the way up into my adulthood now, right? So where I'll tell you to be DIY and see if you can do it first, you should, right? You should look into it first. Now there's a lot of information on the internet and readily available tools to do what you want to do, right? From fixing phone screens to bloody jailbreaking iPods and shit, we done it all, right? I didn't let anything stop me. I had to figure out a way to do it, right? And I didn't care how. And that even... Alright, I'll make another video, right, about the next part of some of my childhood journey, right? But you let me know in the comments, right, if you went through a similar kind of upbringing, right? You had to figure things out for yourself. You had to fix things. You had to try things. Like maybe you did something similar to what I did with the weights in the bag, right? Or maybe you did something similar to what I did with the phono jacks to the CD player, right? Let me know, right? Because it's easy for every generation says, oh, our generation is better than that generation. And every generation says that. But realistically, we got the best of both worlds, right? We got the coming from nothing to the access of the internet, right? And the internet has made a lot of us lazy. But you tell me how your childhood was, if it was similar to mine, or if I'm just a weirdo, right? And I just did things that weren't supposed to be done, right? I don't know, right? But it was normal to me, okay? So like, comment, share, subscribe. Remember, comment and I will respond, right? We'll build our community. We'll have a laugh about it, right? Things that are nostalgic are good to talk about sometimes, even though nostalgia is romanticized melancholy, right? That's another matter, right? That's philosophy talk. It's not necessary, right? So Drivers Make Podcast, like, subscribe, share, check me out on Instagram, check me out on TikTok. Thank you for your time.